Hi, hola. Welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I'm the Humble Apprentice. I'm your Friday host. This is season 12, week 19, and this week's topic is tarot. And we are interpreting one card and telling you how we see it, from our perspective. And okay, so all these little flowers up here, they are from the Rowan Tree, and somebody here in town has a beautiful blooming rowan, but they had to trim some branches from that were, in going into the sidewalk. So I was able to bring some home because I make wands, and I thought that you might enjoy these flowers. And they are, rowan is a very protective tree. It is also called mountain ash. And so I thought it'd be an awesome addition to our video today. Anyway, the card that I originally wanted to choose was a death card, but I kind of talked myself out of it. I said, no, people are not very interested in the death card. But then I remembered back to the beginning when I first started reading tarot, and actually even further. My first experience with tarot came when a boyfriend of mine, we were just starting to go out. He traveled to Paris and he brought me back the Tarot of Marseille. And not knowing really anything about tarot, I started reading the little book and interpreting cards and readings for myself. And then I got the death card, and it freaked me out. I was petrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, because the first thing that everybody, any novice or anybody who's not familiar with tarot, thinks is that, it's an omen, and death is coming. And without actually understanding the original meaning behind the death card, I mean, it's a natural way of seeing or interpreting it, and it's scary because, I mean, it's also used in the media and in movies and TV, and that they always interpret it as actual physical death, which it does not represent that. If there are other cards next to it that come out at the same time, for instance, the Ten of Swords and the Death card, well, maybe it might hint at physical death, at least physical transformation. For the most part, the times that the death card comes out is when there is going to be transformation that has to do with the self, and transformation where your ego has to let go of something that they're holding on to, that the ego is holding on to, based more so on fear of letting go and the comfort of the already known, than anything that's negative. It's actually a good card to get because there's change. Now, when I first became serious about learning how to read the tarot deck, I was, of course, very excited, and I started buying all these different decks. And I was very comfortable using the Angels tarot deck because it's soft, it's gentle, it's easy to interpret, and it has a lot of the definitions right on the front of the card, at least the interpretations that the artist has for that deck. But I still couldn't make the associations with the other cards in a spread, and also interpreting all of the cards and understanding their meaning was a challenge. So I decided to pack up all of my decks and go out and buy the original Rider-Waite tarot deck with artwork from Pamela Coleman Smith, because that was what most of the decks that I had purchased were based on. They use that as the basis for their interpretations, and then they just put their artwork definitions and symbolism that already exists in these cards. So the Rider-Waite tarot deck basically had all the information that I needed and that I felt I needed to learn in order just to understand how all of these decks can be created from the definitions, the symbols, the symbolism that one deck had put out many decades ago, And so I went and I bought it, and I took classes, and I read the books, and it started to make sense, there is the major arcana, right, which is basically the large events that happen in a person's life, and that's what death is part of. It's one of the major events in the life of in this deck. It's called the Fool's Journey, and it's called the Fool's Journey because at the beginning the card 0 is a fool, and basically it's not that the person is foolish, it's just that the person is open-minded and has no preconceptions or prejudices. They haven't developed any fears or ideas that would stop them from moving forward. It's not to say that there aren't any perils or any challenges. It's just that they're open to examine and jump off a cliff, which is what the picture depicts, right? So the other cards they represent the daily events in the person that you're doing the reading. That's what they represent, the daily events in their life. So the major arcana, or some people call them the majors, they represent the large kind of heavy hitting events in the person's life. Something that's so these cards have more weight to them, greater importance in the deck. And basically what the death card to me speaks of is transformation. a change. There's a lot of numerology also used in the Rider-Waite Tarot. And in the Major Arcana, the fourth card is the Emperor. So it talks about stability, strength, but also kind of lack of movement. There's a lot of strong, steadfast controlling energy in that card. And one of the things that first draws my eyes after the skeleton is this person down here. Well, that is the Emperor. And it represents, or he represents, the death of the ego. And the child represents innocence and open to new. And the maiden. And she's turning away from death. And then there's also the spiritual aspect with the priest or pope or spiritual leader there. And he's kind of praying, to death. He doesn't really understand the reason for the transformation. He's like, no, we don't need that. We need to be protected from that. But in the background, you see that there is a sunrise. There is a new dawn. There is a change coming. And just like we can't stop the sun, we can't stop the change. We might resist it. And that's what happens when you resist, or you try to resist the change and the release of the control. So here we also have a new beginning, represented in the flower. And the skeleton has shed everything. It's down to the core. It's down to the person, and they are just the skeleton of what, like their core beliefs. So there's also water in the background that represents emotion, and a little ship here that represents the transition, the journey. The journey of life, the journey from whatever point you're at towards a new beginning, towards the change that's coming. So that is all how I interpret a lot of the symbols in this card. And it also helps to know what card came before it and what card came after it in the Fool's Journey of the Major Arcana, because it helps you see how this card relates to whatever cards you pull with it. And I think that the symbolism in the card is so helpful, when you're reading, because it helps you draw the picture for the person with more clarity, with more information. Whereas if I was to pull this card, which is, I love the Butterfly Tarot. It's just beautiful. It's gorgeous. But this artwork just doesn't have the same feeling as this artwork. And it's obviously not supposed to have the same feeling. But the way that I would interpret this card in a spread is more like, somebody throwing you a lifeline. Because this is Ariadne, and she helped her lover escape the labyrinth by putting some yarn and having him use a yarn to find his way out, to escape. So either somebody is throwing a lifeline, or you are reaching for a lifeline. But it doesn't really talk about transformation and a new beginning and a new a change, a release from something that was no longer working as a positive influence in the person's life. It just has a different feeling, So the artwork definitely influences how I read, how I interpret the spread for somebody. Now this one is also a gorgeous artwork. This is from the Green Witch, and it's called the Lord of Shadows. And what we see here is a spirit that is in the world still, but they can't interact with their family. They're seeing their loved ones walk away, and their loved ones no longer see them and can't interact with them. So also, I mean, if I know that this is death based on the number, I can say that, I can read it based on my experience with it. But trying to read it intuitively, it just doesn't have the same meaning, as the transformation that I get from this tarot deck. I believe this is from the Woodmans Terra. And I also love the artwork. It's very pagan. It has a lot of natural elements, and all the artwork is gorgeous. It's beautiful. But if you are reading for somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience getting tarot readings, getting a card like this, kind of can be jarring, can be a little scary for them. I mean, getting the death card is definitely scary. And maybe some people might not be scared of it, but it also doesn't show me transformation. It shows me decay. It shows me death. It shows me, I think in many cultures, crows are considered beings that communicate and transition easily through the spirit world and back to the land of the living. So they hop easily. They fly into the spiritual plane easily. So I can see that, but it still doesn't give me the same vibe as this is about transformation. This is about letting go of something, and there is change, and it's not easy, and but there's hope. There's pain, but there's hope. And it just doesn't have that same feeling in this card, and I love it and I use it, but I think this one by Colette Baron read, this is the Good Tarot, and it also has a softer, more gentle approach to the images and the symbolism when they represent the different aspects of the cards. But this one is actually, it does talk about transformation, and it actually is named transformation. It's not named death, but it has the young, and it also has, I don't know, I believe she's got like a little creature that caught on fire, and it's transforming, it's burning away. That's what it looks like to me. But this is transformation, and it doesn't have all the elements, but it does have the same feeling of change, of a new beginning out of an old. We're releasing and transforming the old and helping bring forth, new life, new energy, new beginning. So it still doesn't have, like I said, all the elements that this one is just filled with, but it does have a pretty good depiction of what transformation is. So that is how I read and how I interpret the death card in tarot. And I sure hope that this gave you just, a different way of seeing things. Everybody is different, and everybody learns differently, and you don't have to use this original deck. But I just find that just learning it, understanding the symbolism is helpful, because a lot of tarot readers use this as either their main deck or the basis of their interpretations when they're reading. So it's easy to communicate with someone if you understand what they're talking about. It's easy to understand what they're saying if you know where they're coming from. So those are my 2 cents. That's how I see the death card in tarot. I hope that you have a great evening. I hope that you have a great weekend. Stay safe, and blessed be.